Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here today. Thanks for joining us. And what we're doing is continuing Esri's state and local webinar series. So welcome and thank you again for joining us. And this is a webinar series that was started last year by Esri's state and local government team. And we created it for you. You're all practitioners who want to improve the work that you're doing with GIS. My name's Rachel Whedon, and I work in the Philadelphia area where I manage Esri's Mid-Atlantic team. And I'm joined today by my colleagues Alex Brown and Jim Berry. Alex and Jim are both solution engineers who also work with state and local government customers. So as I said, this webinar series was crafted by our state and local government team. And we have over 200 people on this team who are dedicated specifically to this market. And I'm sure some of you know many of us quite well. Now, we work as a distributed team across the United States, where we serve 9 distinct geographic regions. And we find that organizing our team this way really makes a lot of sense. We like the regional approach that helps us build a community in each of these regions. And it's a really strong, close-knit community of users. We appreciate your participation in that. Of course, right now we're all working from home. We're not able to get together and spend time the way that we normally would, but that doesn't change our ability to connect with you and provide assistance. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your regional office anytime you have a question or want to connect about something, including what you learned today. So as we kick off the second part of the series, we have a few webinars scheduled for this year. And the topics that we're covering really represent what we see as common areas of interest among our state and local government users, and areas that we've heard where you'd like to continue to apply GIS or maybe grow the use of GIS across your organization. So I really hope that you'll be able to register for some future topics as well as today. So as we get started, I also want to remind everyone that we will make today's recording available, and you'll also be able to ask any questions that you want in the questions pane. You'll see that in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll have time to address those at the end. So please submit your questions throughout. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. We'll be covering 3 things that you need to know about Esri's new developer experience. And we'll start with something that we're probably all familiar with, how we currently use the ArcGIS system. Your ArcGIS use likely centers on ArcGIS Online, Esri's software as a service, which provides maps, apps, data, and other tools in the cloud. And you also probably use software like ArcGIS Pro on the desktop or ArcGIS Enterprise on the server side. And accessing ArcGIS through these SaaS and software tools has been the primary way that you experience ArcGIS, but it's also been the primary way that developers build against ArcGIS. And what we're introducing today is a new way for them to develop through ArcGIS Platform. This is a new platform as a service that complements the rest of the ArcGIS system. With ArcGIS Platform, what we're doing are taking the underlying services that power ArcGIS and presenting them to developers through a true platform as a service offering. Esri's provided location services and content for many years. As GIS professionals, you already have access to all of these capabilities, and you're familiar with using them. But what we're seeing is an increasing need for our GIS users in state and local government to work with developers, people who need access to the same GIS and location-based capabilities, but are not and do not want to become GIS professionals. So ArcGIS Platform is a new developer experience that targets those developers who need direct access to location services, but not through a traditional GIS interface. So with ArcGIS Platform, developers will have new options. We'll be telling you all about these things today. And we'll focus on 3 areas that you should know about. But before we do that, we should probably review some standard definitions that'll be useful for our discussion. Alex, take it away.
There are 3 main ways an organization can utilize cloud patterns for IT and business operations. On the left, we have infrastructure as a service, or IS. This is probably the most familiar, and it's a foundational approach where the installation and software are run on virtual machines in somebody else's data center. This is how you would deploy ArcGIS Enterprise in Amazon Web Services, Azure, or other cloud platforms. In the center, we have Platform as a Service, or PaaS. This is infrastructure services that are run somewhere else and potentially by somebody else. Instead of just providing raw infrastructure, a higher level set of services that developers can utilize in their applications is served out. One of the most common examples is databases, such as Azure SQL or Amazon Relational Database Services. These services provide building blocks for developers to utilize the services in their development. On the right, we have software as a service, or SaaS. This is a full functional application or solution with no maintenance to utilize on the consumer part. It's the cleanest consumption model by the consumer. And in ArcGIS, that would be ArcGIS Online. Another way to think about that, let's use something that we're all pretty familiar with, pizza. So pizza as a service. Starting on the right, pizza as a service means that you can enjoy pizza. Call pizza delivery. The pizza is designed, prepared, baked in that pizza shop. It arrives hot and ready for you to eat. This is a SaaS model where you can sign up to use a particular service. And if you don't like the crust, you would have to choose a different service because the crust is bundled in with the package that you're purchasing. As we move to the left, we have walk-in and bake. For this model, you walk into a kitchen with ready-to-cook package of toppings. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure or the pizza dough, but you can focus on customizing the thickness of the rolled dough, assembling the ingredients to one's taste, and use someone's provided oven. This option is not suitable for everyone, as you need some pizza making skills to turn the dough into a pizza. Moving to the left again, we now have kitchen as a service. This provides all the kitchen equipment we would need to make pizza. The same customizations for walk and bake apply. However, the user needs to bring all of their own ingredients with the specific brands they like. This includes the pizza dough or the framework. The user has absolute control over what pizza they're going to make, but maybe the rental kitchen doesn't have all the tools. This moves to the left with the most common deployment, on-prem deployment. For the hardcore pizza makers, you can choose everything from the oven type, settings, the pizza stone placement within the oven, and even if you want the dough to sit overnight or not. Complete control over every aspect of the pizza making process. But this is also the most to manage and maintain. In each case that we see, you're still having pizza. However, in some cases, you would do all the work and others do the work for you in other cases. Let me make it clear, though, that IS and PaaS save a huge amount of that preparation work, but still allow for the customizations to your pizza.
All right, so now that we have a better understanding of platform as a service, why is Esri introducing this new option for developers? And why is it so important for all of us to know about it? Our intent in this webinar is to make sure that you as GIS professionals are aware of these options for developers. And what we're seeing is that developers increasingly recognize the value that meaningful maps can bring to their solutions. And having you spend time today learning about ArcGIS Platform will help you better collaborate with developers and enable them to make use of the foundational GIS work that you currently do. Really, anyone should be able to develop with powerful mapping and location services and do so in a way that supports the flexibility and choices that they need. And ultimately, we want to ensure that developers are building engaging applications and building solutions that help address your government's business problems. ArcGIS users have developed apps using our software and solutions for many years. And now with ArcGIS Platform, we're enabling the broader community of developers to do the same. And this likely supports your vision of growing GIS capabilities across your organization and pointing more users and more business systems to your authoritative GIS. We're talking today about an offering that is largely targeted at developers. So how does this impact you if you're not a developer? Well, first, I'll state that our developer platform, while improving greatly over the years, was not always following the conventions that developers expected. We heard from our government customers that sometimes this created friction or obstacles when GIS teams and development teams would try to work together. For example, you might have found yourself in a situation where you were trying to help a developer take advantage of some of your feature services or some of Esri's location services. And the solution was to tell a developer that they needed to start from scratch and rebuild their application with Esri's APIs or app builders. And I can guess that that probably didn't go over too well. What we've done now is focused on improvements that'll make those sorts of conversations different. We are more closely following industry standards, making it easier for developers to take advantage of location services. And ultimately, this creates new opportunities for you to collaborate and drive more use of the authoritative content that you're creating. I also think that being able to tap into developer talent in new ways could be really beneficial and could let you stay focused on your technical skills as a GIS professional. So just take a moment and think about people in your organization that might be using Mapbox or Open Layers, or just getting started with location-based web development. ArcGIS Platform really presents an opportunity for them by opening up the power of the geospatial services that you're already using directly to that developer community. So for those reasons, we're really glad that you joined us today to learn more about ArcGIS Platform. For me, it's helpful to think about ArcGIS Platform in three main areas. First, the comprehensive set of industry-leading location services. This includes a wide variety of content and capabilities. Second, an excellent developer experience, providing access to our APIs and open source mapping libraries. And last, a simple and transparent business model with consumption-based pricing, so you only pay for what you use. Now, it's worth noting that this third area, the new business model, is really designed for developers who are new to ArcGIS. It doesn't represent a change that our existing customers will need to make. It's just a new option. So let's go through each of these elements in more detail, and we're going to start with location services. So think about the things that you as a GIS professional do. You create data visualizations, you geocode addresses, you might solve routes or other analysis questions. And developers really want to leverage these same capabilities, but they don't want to do it in the same way you do, using ArcGIS apps like Pro or the Web Map Viewer. They want to do it via code. They want to build applications with the specific capabilities that they need. Now, you're already familiar with these capabilities, but what we do for developers is make them available as a series of location services. This is web-based content and capabilities that can be accessed directly by developers via code. And it's worth stating that Esri has had location services for quite some time. There's really nothing new here, but the way that ArcGIS Platform enables developers to take advantage of these is really going to be a game changer. So let's spend a few minutes looking at each of these quickly. First, basemaps. Like you do in ArcGIS, developers can access a set of ready-to-use authoritative maps, and they can be used in the API of their choice. Of course, there are a lot of options, but we also offer the ability to style your own with our style editor. Many of you are already taking advantage of hosting your data in Esri's cloud, ArcGIS Online, and developers want to host data too. What they really need is a scalable, secure, and performant environment where they can share their feature, vector, image, and other data to support their applications. Now, of course, once that data is shared, the next step is often visualization. Now, you're using tools like ArcGIS Pro to apply data-driven visualizations, both 2D and 3D. And developers can access these same techniques to visualize their data via APIs. And they'll appreciate that just with a few lines of code, they can take data and quickly render it with a variety of techniques. And they can use smart mapping, which takes the guesswork out of setting map properties by automatically analyzing the data and making data-driven styling suggestions. Of course, you think about any mapping application and the ability to find addresses or points of interest is really common. And our geocoding service, which is powered by industry-leading reference data, is something that developers are really going to want to take advantage of. We want to ensure that anyone is getting the most accurate search results, and most importantly, that those geocoding results will align and be consistent with the methods that you're already using in your organization. We have a selection of routing services, which have the ability to deliver things like turn-by-turn directions, calculating drive time areas, and more. These routing services are really powerful because they take into account things like current traffic conditions. In addition to what we just discussed, we also have an extensive data library that everyone has access to. And I guarantee you that the developers you might be working with will be impressed with what they can find. They can use layers just as simple overlay for visualization, or use this data to enrich or join to their existing data sets. If we round this out with our real-time feeds like traffic, weather, and recent event information like flooding and wildfires, you'll see there's really a lot to explore in this living atlas of the world. Now, many of us would say that the real distinguishing capability of GIS is spatial analytics. And you already know we provide hundreds of tools to help you create new understanding of your data. Developers are really going to appreciate that they can make use of these spatial analytic tools in two ways, both client-side and server-side, depending on their project requirements. And if they need even more analytic capabilities, they can work with big data, real-time analytics, machine learning, and deep learning capabilities. What's exciting is something that's coming soon It's support for these same analytical tools, but having them run directly on data stored in cloud data warehouses, an example being Google's big data query. It's one thing to talk about these location services, it's another to see them applied. So I'll ask Alex to walk us through a demonstration.
Thank you, Rachel. As GIS professionals, you are already aware of the capabilities of ArcGIS. However, you might not realize just how many location services you may be utilizing. This is a typical application in the state and local government space where we see a focused application with a number of operations that address a business challenge. Let's see how users can explore some nearby data. The map is highlighting recent restaurant inspections in New York City. This data is stored as a hosted feature service, taking advantage of data hosting. Let's define an area first by selecting a location on the map. As the location of the map is added, coordinates are passed back to the reverse geocoding service, returning our address. Let's add a spatial selection to our location. As we define a geographic extent, the records are queried from the feature service, and all the records that fall within that geometry are returned. We can also define this by walking time using the routing service with travel times. So the map now highlights 15 minutes walking within the location of interest. As I change my location, my 15-minute walking time is rapidly recalculated and displayed on the map. To recap, this is a simple web mapping application. I highlighted each of the location services that Rachel mentioned earlier: reverse geocoding, data hosting, spatial analytics in our selection area, basemaps, 2 different cartographic representations giving more impact to how the application works, and finally, routing and directions when configuring the walk times. Once again, these operations are nothing new to you. However, realizing the work you do has very specific patterns to help you communicate with developers is critical. Thank you.
So Alex showed how these location services can come together in a fairly typical GIS application. So keep in mind, and the point I really want you to take away is that the developers you work with are probably unaware that ArcGIS can provide all of these capabilities. And what we're about to talk about next will make it even easier and more appealing for them to use these services. And that brings us to the second of our 3 main points, the new developer experience. And I'd like to ask Jim Barry to cover this topic for us.
Thanks, Rachel. ArcGIS Platform provides a premium developer experience that starts with the resources and tools available on developers.arcgis.com, including a developer guide describing the workflows that you can use, extensive SDK documentation, over 100 tutorials with a live sandbox so that you can code against them and see updates instantly. This is a completely overhauled site for developers, making it easier than ever for them to get started. Another big thing for developers is that they can use their preferred mapping API to access these location services. This might be the robust Esri JavaScript API and a set of APIs for mobile and desktop development, or developers can use their own API, allowing you to leverage the investment that you've already made in your solution by using the client of your choice. This includes support for popular open source mapping libraries, including Leaflet, OpenLayers, and Mapbox.gl.js. What this means for developers is that they can use Esri's services regardless of what library they choose to develop with. This flexibility previously didn't exist. All of this is probably better explained by showing it live. So Alex, please give us a tour.
Here's the brand new redesigned developers ArcGIS.com homepage. On first visit, when you scroll down, you're presented with 3 key topics: how to get started building apps, how to obtain an API key, and then how to unlock the location services to power your application. A little bit further on this page, we have quick links to a comprehensive guide that is brand new and has been created to accompany all our developer content. When I highlight mapping APIs, this is really the perfect starting point for a new developer who has no previous experience with ArcGIS. When When you click in there, now I'm in the guide section, which is overarching for all the different particular libraries that you might find. When I click in Learn More, I can scroll down, and now I'm presented with chapters of the guide that kind of level set a lot of the topics that you as GIS professionals know very well. For instance, in the mapping comprehensive guide, this goes as far as to break down what a map is, how it's constructed, and the concept of layers in our web maps, as developers might not know these concepts as well as GIS professionals who work with the ArcGIS platform. On the same page, I can see quick examples based on different relevant libraries, how to add a simple map, maybe using Mapbox GLJS. Maybe I'm interested in Leaflet. Of note, I haven't directly jumped into a particular mapping API yet, but I'm still in a guide or overarching concepts that apply as a whole for the entire platform. Once I jump into tutorials, that's when I can start to see some of the more comprehensive library concepts. I click on Display a Map. Now I have to jump into a particular library to get more information. I'm interested in Mapbox's GLJS. So now when I'm in Display a Map, I'm in the tailored documentation from Mapbox. When I scroll down on any one of these particular tutorial pages, it gives you the particular steps that you need, from HTML to your scripting URLs, how to get your API keys, create your map. And every single one of the tutorials now features a view and code pen function, where you can start to live utilize some of the tutorials that you see in our documentation. If you haven't been to developers in a long time, it's completely been revamped, but there is a plethora of great content to get new developers started and existing developers who want to revisit some of the libraries and resources they've seen in the past.
Thanks, Alex. One final aspect of the developer experience we wanted to cover today was a new option for authentication, and that is the use of API keys. An API key is basically a secret passcode or a token that provides access to a set of services, like a key unlocking a door. When a developer wants to light up their app with ArcGIS location services, they can generate an API key, plug it into their application, and get started using Esri's services. Another benefit of API keys is that they track usage of each one. So if you want, you can create a different key for each app or type of use so that you can see detailed statistics on the ArcGIS developer dashboard. Alex, can you show us this dashboard view in developers.arcgis.com and show these API keys in action?
So notice on this same page we were just looking at, to really get started, the first thing you need to do is get an API key. So when I open the code pen for this example, notice how this is blank. It's because I haven't modified the particular example to use a relevant API key that I have assigned to my user. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and click on my dashboard view. So the dashboard view kind of gives you a comprehensive understanding of a lot of different sections of your developer account. One particular piece that I really like is in the top right. This is curated content. So if I choose a different library, that content is updated based on my selection. It's a really easy way to jump directly into both the tutorials and other sections provided for that particular mapping. Dashboard view also gives you live links into the documentation, features, support, but I can manage my API key directly from this dashboard, or I can go ahead and click on API keys. And this is clearly indicating that I have no API key created. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new one. I'm gonna call this webinar demo key. And I'll go ahead and hit create. Now, a couple of things just popped up as soon as that was created. So now I have access to my key. I can go ahead and select particular mapping libraries to see the snippets of code to add the API key into my code. Now, if I scroll down a little bit further, I can see what types of location services I've actually configured this key to work with. So by default, my key is essentially set up for geocoding not stored, and it's set up for basemaps. But if I was interested in doing some closest facility work or routing, I would have to make sure that all the different location services that I would want to use the API key with are available or checked for that key. So I'm going to leave mine just as is. I'll hit cancel. Another section I want to highlight is refers. So if you need to restrict your application to a particular domain, this is where you would specify those parameters. For example, Philadelphia. So you can restrict where you provide your key, especially in the public applications that serve out. You don't want someone taking your key and using that to ultimately display the content back on their own applications. So once I've created a key, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And if I bring it into this CodePen example that I showed with bringing in a map, it's as simple as replacing the update your API key with your API key. And now this example from Mapbox GLJS is now working. So now I can copy this snippet directly, or I can do a lot of my development right in CodePen. Finally, if I switch to another example, so this is open layers, it's as simple as finding that same snippet of information and pasting that in. It's really a different paradigm for using ArcGIS services. API keys are what developers are most used to in their own development patterns. So now we've exposed this ability to now take advantage of ArcGIS Platform services directly using an API key as well. So you can see, you can start out rather quickly and start developing.
So Alex's demo really highlighted how the developer site makes it easy to work against a variety of map libraries and gain access to Esri services with that API key. And this is a good segue into our third point, the third element of the ArcGIS platform that we want to tell you about, the new business model. The first two topics, location services and the developer experience, are available for any of you to take advantage of now. And most of you will do that through your existing ArcGIS named user accounts. You'll log in with your ArcGIS credentials, and that will control what content you have available and how you can use the location services. However, we have seen that some developers see the ArcGIS named user model as a little bit of a barrier. We already discussed how they don't see themselves as GIS professionals, so they might question why they need a GIS-based identity. And this is where our new business model comes in. It's a new option, really designed to appeal to our new audience of developers. And this may have minimal impact on you and your organization, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware, as it will be really impactful for those developers. So the first thing that a new developer would do is sign up for a free developer account, not an ArcGIS named user account. And this developer account comes with a free generous tier of location services usage. So for example, they could consume 20 million basemap tiles or do 20,000 geocodes to kickstart their development. And the next thing to note is that the pricing for the use of these location services won't be based on ArcGIS service credits. Instead, it's a pay-as-you-go model with real currency costs. And this consumption-based business model is easy to understand. It has built-in cost estimators like you see on the screen, and developers will only pay for what they use. Now, it's important to say, as GIS professionals, you're going to continue to use your ArcGIS named user accounts and service credits as you normally do. However, there are a couple of situations where we thought the new pricing model might be relevant to you. So one example might be how some governments want to implement a cost-sharing model. They want to supply GIS services across their organization and have those internal departments and agencies pay for their usage of GIS. And this new business model provides a more straightforward costing model to support cost sharing like this. Or let's say that you're standing up a high-profile public-facing website. You're expecting it will go viral. It makes use of Esri location services like geocoding. This new business model might be appealing. You could essentially separate your costs to ensure that a very popular app doesn't necessarily have a negative impact on your service credit usage. So whether it's the new business model, support for those open source libraries, or the new industry standard API key authentication model, there's really a lot for developers to like about ArcGIS Platform. And to better explain how this might fit within your existing use of ArcGIS, we wanted to walk through a few different scenarios to illustrate. So let's bring Alex and Jim back into the conversation to help us walk through these scenarios. And we'll start with the first one. So in this scenario, we have an existing ArcGIS customer. Let's say that they have ArcGIS Online and an enterprise-wide implementation that uses software like Pro and Enterprise. And they have several ArcGIS web applications. Maybe they're built with the JavaScript API or Web App Builder or some of our other builder apps. Does ArcGIS Platform change the way that they build and deploy ArcGIS web apps? And does anything need to change about their currently deployed apps? Alex, I'll let you answer that one.
Thanks, Rachel. So the short answer is nothing is changing. The internally deployed apps can keep going as is. The end users should themselves already be named users within your organization. And this will get the capabilities of the app or that license through the software authorizations that are tied to that named user account. So once again, no, should not directly impact the way they build their apps internally and authenticate now.
Great. It's good to know that nothing needs to change for those current applications that are deployed. All right, how about scenario 2? So same starting point, we have an existing ArcGIS customer with SaaS and software deployed throughout their organization. And let's say that a developer within this agency has created their own application using Mapbox. And the developer wants to consume hosted feature layers that the GIS group maintains, and also start using Esri's geocoding services. So how does ArcGIS Platform change how you can help them? And what type of an account should this person use? Jim, why don't you take this one?
Sure. Yes, we've seen this from time to time with our organizations. There's lots of other technologies out there that people use as they select the right tool from the job. Sometimes they build their front ends with Mapbox or Leaflet or open layers. And in the past, if they wanted to consume Esri-based services, whether they be location services or hosted feature layers or tile layers, this was sometimes impractical to do, sometimes not possible to do. So the way to get that application to use Esri and ArcGIS was to wait for that application, either rewrite it from scratch or wait for that application to get to its kind of end of life, and then re-engineer it using, say, the Web App Builder or the JavaScript API. Now we have another option, is you can keep that application, especially if it's in production and working very well and the users like it. And now we have documentation and we have samples and support for it. And also the API key approach that Alex talked about before, where you can consume a la carte Esri location services and also ArcGIS feature layers, tile layers within a different front end, like a Leaflet or a Mapbox, and use those a la carte. So if you want to take advantage of those services, you can. If you want to re-engineer it fully on the ArcGIS stack later, that's totally up to you, but at least you can now start taking advantage of the power of ArcGIS really in any type of client application.
So Jim, what about the type of account? Is this going to be someone with an ArcGIS named user account or a developer account?
Yeah, I would recommend for that developer to become at least a creator named user in your org, so that they have access to the licenses and software and also the data access, be able to be a part of groups that you might be sharing maps and data in. I might also recommend that that developer also subscribe to at least a free essentials level of a developer subscription, so that they have their own sandbox area for development and testing and building prototypes and proofs of concept in their own type of an environment. So that's what I would recommend.
Cool. That makes sense. Kind of a little bit of a mixed approach. All right, so for scenario 3, we have an existing ArcGIS customer, again with that SaaS and software deployed. And in this case, they have an external web application for public use. And the app uses Esri location services, let's say, geocoding service. And so the way that's deployed now is with a proxy server, and that is what enables the anonymous use of Esri services. So with this deployment pattern, does anything need to change about the existing deployed apps, or are there other options? Alex, why don't you take this one?
So in this scenario, that customer can still use a proxy server to provide access to secure location services in a public app through like anonymous access. They can also have the option of replacing that proxy server with what we showed earlier with our standardized API key. This is easier. It's an industry standard approach, providing that public access, but controlled public access to those service content. Since API keys can be configured separately for specific users, you can track the usage of the key individually and measure the activity and demand currently and now over time.
So no immediate change needed, but definitely a new option if folks want to take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
And so that'll bring us to our last scenario. So in this case, we have a developer who works in a department with no ArcGIS licensing, and they'd like to bring in ArcGIS location services like smart mapping, analytics, into an app that they've built. But this app was built with a different non-Esri library, in this case, OpenLayers. So Jim, why don't you tell us how they would get started?
Sure. This is actually, in my mind, the simplest scenario. This is someone who wants to build apps with ArcGIS, but does not have nor does need a full enterprise GIS to do so. They would simply go to our developers website and they could get a ArcGIS for Developers subscription. As I mentioned before, there's 5 different levels. The lowest is free. They could subscribe to that and then they get all the developer tools, not just the APIs, but also the builders and templates and documentation and support. And they can build what they need. And if they're using third-party tools or open source tools, that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned before, with the API key, they get a la carte access to Esri location services. This would be a good option, say if you have partners that are working and building apps for state and local government, or you have startups that are doing that. I also found this useful in the New York City area. There's a robust civic tech nonprofit community there that are building things, or perhaps students and hackathons building things to try to solve civic problems and assisting state and local government. This is a great license for them to have, and they don't need to build the whole thing on the ArcGIS stack.
And Jim, what you said made me think of an interesting point. You know, a developer might start using some of the more, let's say, basic or bread and butter location services that Esri provides, but I think once they start learning about some of the other capabilities with analytics or some of the other data sets we provide, some of the visualization capabilities, they'll find that there's a lot more to make use of there.
Well, that's a good point, because if you're going to build an entire front end, say with Mapbox or Leaflet or OpenLayers, there's clearly capabilities of ArcGIS that go far beyond visualization. And if they've already started building with ArcGIS and they find that they want to use more, that their end users want more and more capabilities, they'll find that ArcGIS has those, and they don't have to start over from scratch. They're already using ArcGIS. Now it's just a matter of growing those capabilities into the application.
Got it. Well, I think those scenarios were helpful to talk through some of the distinctions that we've made throughout today. So hopefully you can use these to relate back to your work and where ArcGIS Platform fits. And so at this point, we'll bring it home with our summary. So I hope you saw through today's webinar how ArcGIS Platform is really an exciting new product for Esri. Now, as you think about ArcGIS Platform, I really want to stress the point that this platform as a service developer experience really complements ArcGIS Online, Pro, and Enterprise. It doesn't need to replace any of your current ArcGIS development that your teams have built. Now you can find all the information that you need on developers.arcgis.com. Another great resource that I wanted to highlight is the Esri Developer Summit coming next month. This year's Developer Summit includes a special track on ArcGIS Platform, and attendees will also be able to explore over 20 dedicated sessions on other topics like building web applications with open source APIs, or learning about Esri's design system, which is a great way to create beautiful and consistent web apps even faster. So we hope that you take advantage of this opportunity to virtually join Esri in April for the Developer Summit and discover a global developer community that's ready to connect and collaborate. So what do we want to ask you to do as a result of joining this webinar? That brings us to our call to action. First, we want to encourage you to share this information with anyone in your organization who does web development. Invite them to join the Developer Summit next month. Ultimately, we see this as an opportunity to empower developers with the same location services that you use to support your organization. And it creates new opportunities to collaborate on apps and solutions to solve your business challenges. We do have time today to cover a few questions, so let's stop sharing and see what we can help answer for you. All right, so let's go through a couple of questions that we had submitted, and just a reminder, as we're answering those, there's still time to enter your question in the questions pane, and we'll try to get to it today. So the first question from Ingrid, does ArcGIS Platform relate at all if they are using their own custom publicly shared geocoding service? And I know this is probably common to a lot of governments. They have their own services that they use, whether it be basemaps or geocoding services. And I think, Ingrid, the way I'd answer this is that ArcGIS Platform doesn't necessarily change the way that you would use that geocoding service. Keep in mind that geocoding is just one of the many location services that Esri makes available. So maybe using some of the other services in a development environment, using the API key functionality or some of the third-party API integration might be elements of ArcGIS Platform to complement some of the existing services that you have. Alex or Jim, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, that was a really good summary, Rachel. Ingrid, the differentiator really is that, your custom geocode service is not an Esri location service that's tied with our platform because it's your own custom locator. So what Rachel's kind of alluding to is, you could certainly use the API key to access your locator that's basically added to your org, and you tie that into an app that's designed through a developer that is using Mapbox or Esri Leaflet, things like that. But really just complement it. Anything that's shared publicly, you can access using that API key in your org.
Thanks. All right, we have a question from Tenario. Can we get a subscription for our own personal development projects? So maybe some work that's taking place outside of their role as a government employee. And Jim, I'll let you answer that.
Sure, absolutely. If you go to developers.arcgis.com, you could always sign up for a developer subscription. As I mentioned before, there's 5 levels. The lowest is free. It's called the Essentials level, and it gives you a certain amount of storage and base maps and geocoding and routing that you can use with the APIs, also with the builders and the templates, and you can start, and the tutorials, so you could do all the training stuff with it as well. So a developer subscription is linked to an individual person, and you can get one as a part of your work or just get one for personal use. And as long as others that are using ArcGIS have published their services with the everyone setting, then you can consume those services and build apps around those as well.
Yeah. All right, and Jim, you might have touched on something to help answer Julie's question. She was asking about good online training tools for beginner developers. Obviously, the developers.arcgis.com site has a great sandbox environment, tutorials, etc. Jim, is there anything else you'd suggest to round out that offering?
Sure, yes. The tutorials are wonderful at the developer website. We've been working on those for several years now. There's a few hundred out there, and as Alex mentioned, the ones that relate to use with third-party technologies are really designed to make sense to people that are using those technologies. Also, if you go to training.esri.com, that is, you can get access to paid instructor-led training courses, but there's also a lot of free videos and self-paced web-based learning tools that are out there as well. And then finally, another good source I always love to mention is community.esri.com, which is the where you'll find our discussion forums and blogs and that are organized by product and by technology. And you'll find a 24/7 access to our global ArcGIS user community and developer community that are out there asking and answering questions. So as you start ramping with the tools, if you hit snags or things that don't make sense, very, very good chance that someone has already asked and answered that question already. The search is pretty good, and that's also a really good learning tool. You're not just learning through like training courses, but also learning along with the rest of the community.
All right, and I think we'll take maybe just one more question before we wrap it up. So Bill asked if it's possible to set a limit on how much is spent on a category of service to prevent unexpected overruns. So Bill, I mentioned that the new business model is a pay-as-you-go model, but we also have a prepaid option. So if you want to prepay, that would allow usage across all of the services. Jim or Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that there's a way to limit consumption in a specific category of service though, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so the prepaid would be a general, kind of bucket of costs that would prevent you from having those cost overruns across all usage.
What you could do, right? So when I showed in the demo was you select the different types of location services you want that API key to essentially have access to. So that is a way to think of it in those terms, like prepay to a certain amount, but then highlight specifically, okay, this API key is just looking at our routing services or closest services, things like that.
Perfect. Okay, so we're just about at our time. I know we covered a lot today. I think it would be helpful if maybe we boiled this down to just the main takeaways that we'd like all of you to walk away with today. So Jim, why don't you give us a quick recap?
Sure. If there's really one thing we'd really like you to take away from this session and the new ArcGIS Platform product, this platform as a service product, is that if you're an existing user of ArcGIS, and say if you have ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, or maybe you have ArcGIS Enterprise on your servers, if you want, as Alex said, nothing needs to change. There's nothing new to buy. There's nothing you need to change about how you've implemented the ArcGIS system. ArcGIS Platform is really a product designed to make it easier for developers to use content services and location services from Esri, even if they don't use other parts of the ArcGIS system. And that it makes ArcGIS developer tools and services more interoperable than ever with other commercial and open source tech. However, it does give you more options for when you're building custom apps, particularly those that are public facing. I know a lot of you government users are also standing up applications for public use by anonymous users without needing to log in. The tools are better for that as well. So that's it. It's primarily for developers, doesn't change anything or take anything away from what you're doing now. And for most of you, you just get it already. And it gives you more than you had before. So that's the main takeaway, or small set of takeaways I want to emphasize.
Great. Well, that's good news, Jim. Thank you for that. I want to thank Alex and Jim both for joining today and helping walk through ArcGIS Platform for you. And most importantly, thank you for your time. Don't forget to reach out to your Esri regional office if you want to talk about this further or with any other questions you have. And we hope that we'll be able to see you soon. Bye-bye.